back, and we have got a story for you today. I'm Termite Watkins and my partner, Mr. S., and it's pretty exciting already.
This is going to be a good one. We've already been talking a little bit beforehand. I said, hey, hold on. Save some of these stories. These are good.
Okay, so I'm so proud to be able to announce this guy right here. He's just a normal guy. You know, he was the #1 attorney in the state of Texas many times. He's handled all kinds of big cases. He was Marvin Zindler's personal attorney. And so, but you know what? Everybody, let me get right to it. This is Robert Pelton.
Hello, Termite. I'm glad to be here with you today, brother.
Robert, it's so good to have you with me and Mr. S. And
Mr. S.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Pleasure.
I want to get right to it. I got a lot of questions.
Yes, sir. Yes,
got
sir.
a lot of.
I got plenty of answers.
Okay, so you know I'm gonna point out a couple of things right off the bat. Right off the bat, I noticed you got your Bible and your pistol.
Yes, sir.
So if God doesn't help you get out, you're gonna shoot
I
you.
never
out.
leave home without it unless I'm in court. A Bible. Praise the Lord and pass the ammunition. Ted posted it. So that's what we do.
Hey guys, we're gonna have some fun today. He's got so many incredible stories. I got a handful of them, and I just dropped one of them. But okay, before we get into the stories, tell me the story behind your hair, and then I want to know how'd you get started. But tell us about your hair.
Never in my life have I had long hair, ponytail. But my brother had researched our family, and there were some full-blooded Cherokee and Tonkawa Indians in our family. So my brother died a year ago, my only brother, and I'm in mourning still for the death of my brother. And I'm growing my long hair in honor and memory of my brother, who was my closest friend and brother, the only brother I had.
I love it. I love it. And I bet you he could tell us some stories.
My brother could tell you a lot of stories, too, because he knows some that a lot of people don't know. He knew. That's what's so bad about my brother dying, because he knew all my life stories and I knew all his.
Yeah.
Got to start archiving some of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you could probably
This
write
will be
a
part
book.
of it.
This man could write a book with just the stories of the cases that he's handled. We've been sitting here talking about a lot of them, and what an interesting life. So tell me, you know, you didn't start off with the silver spoon in your mouth.
No, when I got the Racehorse Haynes was the greatest lawyer around that I knew of. And so the Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association gives out an award, the Racehorse Haynes Lifetime Achievement Award. So when I got that award, the guy that introduced me was Jim Skelton, who I'd worked for. And the other people were up there talking about how their dad made a phone call and they've got this connection. And Jim said Robert Pelton started out life with a boot up his ass. That's how I started my life out. So I didn't have any connection.
Now, where'd you grow up?
In Abilene, Texas.
Abilene, Texas. So tell me, what made you want to be a lawyer?
Termite, when I was a kid, I saw how people were taken advantage of and poor people were treated badly. And I found out later in my life that Marvin Zindler and I got to be friends because his philosophy and mine, it's hell to be poor. Yeah. It's hell to be poor. And the people that I grew up around were poor people, hardworking people. They were good people, but they were poor. And people looked down on them because they were poor, because they lived in a bad part of town. I lived on Pine Street in Abilene, which is out north of Abilene, where all the junkyards were. And my dad had a little auto repair shop, and my brother and I would play in the wrecked cars, and the junkyard dogs became our best friends. And we met every kind of character you could think of. And at the time, it was embarrassing. But as I grew older, that was the best thing that happened to me, because I got to know people from the bottom up to the top.
That is so neat. You know, I just dropped a card that I was trying to look at, and they told you not to be a lawyer because you didn't have something. Who was it that told you not to be a lawyer? Because now he's the top lawyer.
Well, thank you for that. No, one of my professors in law school, or not in law school, in college, McMurray College there in Abilene, I said, he was a lawyer. He wore a pinstripe suit and a hat, seersucker suit, all that lawyer stuff.
City slicker.
And I said, man, I think I may want to be a lawyer. Oh, no, said, you can't be. I said, he said, you don't have any contacts. I don't know. He said, you don't know the right people. Well,
wow.
Guess what, pal? I know some of the right people now. I didn't then, but I do now.
Yeah. You know, before I get into some of the stories, you know, I know you like to help people. The way that we met was you helping a lady, I'm not going to name the name, Her husband is in the penitentiary for life
Yes.
for a crime that he may not have done. And you were just helping, not charging or anything.
Right.
And how do you make it when you don't charge people? Because I know of a lot of people that you've helped. How do you do this?
I've never been motivated by money, Termite. The Lord will provide. And Percy Foreman, who was the greatest lawyer before Racehorse, when I met him, he said, if you're doing this for the money, you're not going to succeed. He said, you do a good job and the money will come in. So I followed Percy Foreman's advice to me.
And how long ago was that?
That was 40 years ago.
40 years ago.
40 years ago.
I'm going to jump around because I got this stuff in no certain order. But
Okay.
that's me. You know, y'all will learn this. That Mr. S is the organized one out of our relationship
I
here.
do what I can.
So, but before I get sidetracked and tell about me and you, I want to go back to him because we've got so much good stuff. You had a 12/21.
I'm in my office on 12/21/12. That's the day the Maya and Aztec Indians predicted the world was going
Oh,
to
I remember that date.
Yeah.
Everybody's losing their minds over the Mayan.
People were flocking to emergency rooms. Well, I did have a heart attack in my office, and my lady
Oh.
friend at the time came in and saw me, and my neck was turning black, and she said, I'm going to call the ambulance. I said, no, drive me to Methodist Hospital. So by the time we got to Methodist Hospital, my neck was turning black. I was hallucinating, seeing all these Mayan warriors coming at
Oh,
me.
my goodness.
She pulls up there, and two police officers that I knew carried me in there. And as soon as they saw me, they knew I was about dead. So the Dr. Kleiman, who was the doctor on call, got me in the cath lab and put stents in me. And I stayed in that hospital 12 days, and all I did was pray. I said, I don't want a pacemaker. I don't want this. I want to lay here and pray. And that's what I did for 12 days. And finally, the doctor came and said, we don't know what happened, a miracle, but you're going to get to leave probably tomorrow. So I did. That's a very significant day for me. And
That's you know, it's a great, significant day for you. Now, just putting a little chuckle into it, probably a big, significant day for all the nurses and the doctors because you're pretty feisty.
Well,
You've always been.
No, and I'd already had back surgery that year, and the nurse and I hit it off. Louisa was the nurse in the cardiac intensive care unit, and she said, they're not giving you a pain medication. I already hit back, so I'm laying on my back, and my back, so she finagled around, so they gave me double the pain medicine. So
Whoa.
it made it a lot better laying there for 12 days.
I bet it did.
And then when I get out, she said, you know who your neighbor has been? I said, no, I really hadn't been worried about the neighbors. I've heard all these code blues. She said, no, George Bush was your neighbor. It's when George Bush, George
Bush Senior, yeah.
was in there for the hospital.
I'll be
But
dadgum.
all I heard were code blues and hoping it wasn't going to be me having a code blue. So after 12 days, they let me out.
That's incredible. Well, you know, I want to get to something else. I'm a person that I like snakes. I don't kill snakes and all that. And one of the pictures, let's see if I can if they can see that. Yeah. Okay. That's a diamondback rattler.
Yeah, so for people that are just listening, we're showing a picture of Robert hunting down rattlesnakes on purpose, and he's got a huge one right there they're holding in his hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me about the rattlesnakes.
Okay. I don't play golf like a lot of
Okay.
my friends do. If I have a hobby, it's catching and releasing rattlesnakes. And my friends think I'm crazy, of course, but that's what I like to do. And this guy in the picture with me had a TV show, Rattlesnake Republic.
Rattlesnake Republic.
And he wanted to hunt some snakes, so I took him to my place, and we caught about 30 rattlesnakes. And then I felt guilty that we took them to the rattlesnake roundup. So I said, after that, no more snakes. If you capture a snake, turn it loose. No more. They're God's creatures, and I don't want any more snakes killed at this place.
I love
So
it.
nobody's killed a snake that I know of since then.
Got another picture here. Marvin Zindler, Slime in the Ice Machine. Many of you here may remember that. So tell me about your story with Marvin Zindler. What a great man. What a great man that did so much for poor
Yes.
and underprivileged people. Tell me about
Okay.
your relationship with him.
There was a lawyer named Jim Skelton that I did an internship with. He, at that time, had been appointed to represent a young man who was accused in the largest mass murder case in U.S. history, David Owen Brooks. And I did my internship with Jim. And so Jim and I got to be buddies, and Jim had been Marvin's lawyer. This was right after Marvin had closed down the chicken ranch. And they made the movie The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas.
That's
Yeah.
the prime.
That's Marvin's.
Yeah.
That film was made based on Marvin shutting down the chicken ranch.
Wow.
So anyway, Marvin and Jim got in an argument over something that I don't want to really tell you about, but it was an argument. So I was there, and Marvin looked at me and he said, I need another lawyer. Will you be my lawyer? And I said, yes, sir. I think I will. I'd only been a lawyer like 2 years. I said, I think I will be. Yes, sir. And I was his lawyer till the day he died. And then my brother, when he finished school, the two of us were Marvin's lawyers.
I bet it's a hard time keeping him out of trouble because he's always stirring up trouble.
He and I, he would have me do stuff. I said, there's no way we can win this case, Marvin. You can do it. You can do it. You can do it. And we did it. I never lost a case that
He kept trying to challenge you.
And then Marvin said, we got to sue the American Nazi Party.
Listen to this
Yeah,
story.
this is-
That's
crazy.
got sue the American Nazi
The
Party. All right,
American
tell this
Nazi
one.
Party had a radio ad on the phone message that they would give $500 to anybody that killed a Jew, a black, a Hispanic, a Chinese, any
What
foreigner.
year is this?
1977, 8.
All right. So
77,
not the
78.
30s.
So Marvin decided, he said, I want to see those. He called them a name, which I won't say here, but
Those guys.
he said, I want y'all to sue them. So what we did, we got a black man. In fact, it was Mickey Leland was one of our witnesses, and I had a Hispanic witness, one from each race that could testify that they were in fear of this message, that they were in fear of getting killed. So we filed the lawsuit. And of course, the judge granted our motion to have the phone called erased, disconnected, but it went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and they finally ruled that it was freedom of speech. So
Interesting.
But anyway, we got plenty of death threats and
I imagine.
swastikas painted on our office, and
I mean, that's pretty
after
scary.
that, all of us were carrying guns.
So that's why you got your gun in your back.
Well, that's just one of the reasons.
That's the start of it.
Yeah, that's just one of the reasons.
Now, you know I'm going to take you up on what you told me earlier. I'm just making this public that, I told you I needed a new gun,
Yes.
and you said you had one for me.
One of my clients is the best gunsmith in the state of Texas, Eddie, and Eddie does the gun work for the Texas Rangers, the Highway Patrol. You came there to what?
He was at the barbecue.
We had the barbecue at Eddie's house, but he's the gunsmith for all of our Texas Ranger friends.
I want to tell you what a great day that was. I got to spend a lot of time with the Texas Rangers, and of course with this gentleman right here, and of course, to say the least, it was an exciting day there.
Well, there's a Ranger, Joe Harrelson, is the longest serving
told me about
Texas
him.
Ranger. So he was there, and then Brandon Bess is the cold case ranger. So they were in, essentially, because Harrelson and I got to talking one time, and we both had been in the Army at the same place, at Fort Ord, California, where we learned to be combat infantry.
So y'all both are in California at the same time.
Well, no, he was there. I was there 2 years before him. But we had that in common.
Right.
We had the same training.
A cold case. I imagine there's all kinds of
There's plenty of
stories
cold
behind that
cases.
as well.
There's plenty of cold cases, and that's when they. I was at another judge. Every year, Judge Poe has an event honoring the police officers that have been killed in the line of duty. So Joe Harrelson was there, Jason Taylor, the head ranger, and Brandon Bess, and it's a very solemn ceremony honoring all the police officers that have been killed in the line of duty. So it gives me this badge that I have on. I'm not an honorary Texas Ranger. I certainly make no claim to be one, but I'm a friend of the Rangers. Wow. And it was funny because he gave this to me, and Judge Poe's looking over there wanting one in this. He said, they didn't give me one. I said, well, I don't know, You'll have to figure that one out, but that was pretty funny.
He's already got a stack of other things, but before he goes any more, you've already done a lot of great things. You're already achieved so much. Tell us a little bit about some of the times, this show was all about when you got knocked down in life.
No, well, I got
You
knocked.
told me a little before
Tell them
this.
the struggles that you've had.
Tell me a little bit. We're trying to encourage people. They see you, our listeners are listening, they're watching you. They look at this guy, he's awesome. Tell them how some of the non-awesome times.
I was blessed to have a good mother and dad. They met during World War II. My mother was working in a Greyhound bus station as a waitress, and my dad was in the Army at Camp House in Gainesville, Texas.
All right.
They met, got married, had me. We moved to Abilene, and that's the the nursery school I got in trouble. That's when the nuns kicked me out of the nursery school. My mother bought
Started
me,
back in nursery school.
and I could be home. I beat her home, and could never figure out how I did it. Also, my other friend, that he and I started the first grade together. He didn't get along with them.
So you were a troublemaker from a very early age.
Well, I was different.
Different,
I had a different
okay.
attitude. I was a rebel
That's a
without a
positive
cause.
spin on it. All right.
And then I got kicked out of Vacation Bible School. And then in the 9th grade, I threw pennies along with another friend of mine, Mac Alexander, in the middle of a big pep rally. We threw pennies out on the.
It's frowned upon.
Yeah, and we got in trouble for that. So everybody figured I'd end up in prison.
So all your friends from back then would be surprised to see where you are today.
Some of them said I'd end up in prison. I said, only if I'm the warden.
There you
So
go.
I come back with that. But no, I mean, our family were hardworking people. We didn't have a lot of money. And Pine Street, where we grew up, is not exactly the greatest place to live. It's where the junkyards are. It's where all the poor people live. But I was blessed. I used to be embarrassed about that. Now I'm proud that I grew up there.
Yeah.
It made my brother and I
Small beginnings.
appreciate what we got. But that was hard growing up there. And then I worked in a gas station. That was one of my jobs. And all these people would come in there going to the lake in their boats, a lot of the classmates, and I'm there filling up their car with gas, and that makes you feel bad.
See, I want to emphasize that to our listeners. Yeah. If you're working at a gas station, you're working at a grocery store, a seemingly small job,
right?
It's still a job. It doesn't mean you got to stay there.
No,
there's
no,
nothing against it, but hey, you got to start somewhere.
Before that, I'd worked in a cafe, and you ever heard of a Greasy Spoon Cafe? It was definitely a Greasy Spoon Cafe. And I worked there, and my friend Jack Sharp, that I'll tell you about in a minute, that bought an entire town and made me the city attorney. We both
bought a
worked
whole
there.
town?
He bought a whole town, Impact, Texas. And he's the mayor, made himself mayor, and made me the city attorney.
Where is this town
north
at?
of Abilene.
North of Impact?
Impact, Texas. It was in a
Right.
county where Taylor County was dry, but a lawyer named Dallas Perkins incorporated an area and it went all the way to the Supreme Court to allow him to serve alcohol. So he made a fortune, and then in his later years, he felt guilty. So he sold it to Jack, who's got a church there. Where liquor was being sold, down there's a church.
That's an interesting
So that's
one.
a pretty interesting
Very
story.
interesting.
But Jack and I met when we first, because he was also from a family that didn't have a lot of money. And
Well, wouldn't you say, I like to really emphasize stories of people come from, nothing. I often think, would you be this successful if you weren't coming from that? Because it kind of created something. It created
the way I look at it, I have a wolf chasing me. A wolf is chasing me, and I'm not going to let the wolf.
Right.
I'm not going to let the wolf catch me. But when you start out, maybe at the bottom of the barrel, bottom of the pole, some people choose to stay there. I chose to not stay there. My brother and I both chose to rise above that. That's when we both went to school. We both went to church. Our mother made us go to church whether we wanted to or not, even though I'd been kicked out of Vacation Bible School. But my mother made us go to church, and we tried to do the right thing. And we both had jobs. My brother and I both started working. There was a drive-in theater close to our house, and we would sneak in the drive-in picture show, as we called it back then. And finally, the guy that managed the place said, "I know y'all are sneaking in the show. I'm going to put you to work." So he
gave you
our
a job.
job was to clean up what people had thrown out, and they threw out everything. And then I got a promotion to run the snow cone machine. So my job was to sit there and watch all these movies 1,000 times. I've seen the movie Shane probably 100 times. But it was a good job. And we were 12 and 13 years old.
But the whole thing that you just said, you recognize you're at the bottom, and you have to make that choice.
Yes.
It's all about that choice.
Okay. Out of the kids that were in the class that I got kicked out of Vacation Bible School, there's probably about 10 of them. My brother, Jack Sharp, and me were the only ones that either didn't end up dead or in prison. These guys.
So of your circle of friends back then,
they were criminals back then, stealing horses and cattle. When they were 14, 15 years old, they went to juvenile. Back then, they sent you to Gatesville, which was
well, I imagine that's
prison.
tough. So these are the people you're surrounded by.
Those are your
peers. And do you want to fit in, or do you want to, break free from that? That's a choice you had to make.
Well, the first day that we moved, we had lived on the south side in a rented house. We moved to the north side. My dad bought a little piece of land, put his shop up there. So all the kids, it wasn't a gang. It was just a bunch of kids. We were the new kids there. So the toughest kid was Jack Sharp, my friend. So he comes up to me, and he and I, of course, get in a fight. Well, somebody lobbed a brick and hit me in the mouth and cracked two of my front teeth.
Oh.
But after that, Jack and I became friends, and then he buys the town, and we're friends now. So I'm going to make sure he sees a copy of this because he'll be tickled pink about
Yeah,
it.
he's going to love to hear
Because
that.
he had struggles too that he overcame. He had alcohol problems. You know, we all had some kind of problem back then because of
And we all do now.
all the things.
So
yeah.
times have changed, but people are still the same. We all
Yes.
got
Hey,
problems.
Robert, something that interested me. Okay, you didn't start out doing just making great grades and
No.
stuff like that. Matter of fact, tell
Okay.
us a little bit about
No.
that.
Okay.
It takes a lot of schooling to be a lawyer.
So in high school, I only went to school till noon. I hated school so bad. So I worked in a printing shop. And it was a deal set up for kids that weren't going to college. And I said, I'm not going to college. I didn't really like school very much. And school didn't like me. So I worked in a printing shop. And then I actually finished high school. And then I applied to go to college.
Actually finished.
Yeah, actually. And then
Surprise yourself.
the guy that was the new dean at the college had been at the high school. And he said, oh, my God.
You again.
Yeah, he really said that. And he said, your grades are so bad, I don't think we can let you in here. And I kept saying, I want to be in here. I want to go to college. You didn't want to go to college back there in high school. And I said,
what
look,
changed?
I've changed my mind. So he said, we'll let you in on probation. So I started my college career on probation and finally got finished with that.
What did change your mind? Like,
I
wow.
already knew what I wanted to do. I just didn't want the world to know. I mean, I'd
Okay.
already had a goal in my
You
mind.
just didn't want to advertise it. Kind of keep it private.
Yes, I didn't want to tell
Work
them what
your
I wanted to do.
course.
I wanted to do my own thing, and luckily my brother followed in my footsteps, so to speak. And our ancestors were all hardworking people. My great-granddad enlisted in the Civil War when he was 15 years old. He's Abraham George Washington Cox. My granddad was Robert E. Lee Cox.
Oh, wow.
That's where I got
Oh,
my name
wow.
from.
Wow.
They all were hardworking. In fact, I look now, my brother had done this research on our family, and I can see myself doing some of the same things they did 100 and something years ago. It's just interesting to see how we turn out. And so I
That's
just
why I
made
say
up my
times
mind.
change, but people don't.
I made up my mind to do something, and I did. And luckily, the Lord blessed me to be friends and Marvin's lawyer and to get to know Judge Poe. Judge Poe and I were on opposite sides in the courtroom. We were fought against each other. And then once I realized that he had lived in Abilene and went to school in Abilene, he and I became friends. Then he was a judge, and we became friends. He would appoint me on cases that no other lawyer wanted to fool with.
Tell us about some of these cases. So you're a defense attorney.
Yes.
Criminal defense.
I represent people that get accused of crimes.
So
some of them may have done them. It doesn't matter to me. There's a moral guilt and a legal guilt, and everybody makes mistakes.
Sure.
A lot of people don't want to admit their mistakes, and I never claimed to be perfect.
Right.
And like Percy Foreman used to say, he was wrong once in his whole life, only wrong once, and that's the time he thought he was wrong and found out he was really right. So I'm not claiming that, but that's just we all make mistakes, and we all sin and fall short of the glory of God.
Amen.
Yeah.
Everybody does.
And it's
Everybody.
easy for
We
us
all
to
do.
judge, but it's your job is, hey, you're not the judge. You're just
Yes.
there to state a case. The judge is the judge.
Yeah.
And that's
Right.
how you keep that story.
But no,
Just
when
keep
I
it-
came to Houston, I didn't know anybody. I sorted out, and finally, standing in line, he's got a copy of the letter that my brother was in the Army. We were both in the Army. We joined the Army to be in the unit that Audie Murphy had been in, the 36th Infantry Division. They had a National Guard unit in Abilene, so we joined the Army. We were in the Army for a while, then we were in the National Guard, the same unit Audie Murphy was in. But my brother, when I wrote that letter to him, was in Infantry Officer Candidate School in Fort Benning, Georgia. And I had borrowed his car and $75 to come to Houston. And I wrote him a letter telling him that I'll bring his car back and thank you so much and how proud I am of him. And he saved that letter. After he died, I was going through stuff, and I found that letter that my brother had saved.
Oh, wow.
And then I also tell him that I got a loan for $100 to start law school. That's how I started law school, with a $100 loan.
I'd like to hear about that. So, yeah, we hear you're a lawyer. It's tough from school. You had to borrow money.
I had to borrow money.
Your brother was saying this one part. Hey, I got a job making $600 a month.
Right.
And
Oh, yeah.
making $600 a month.
And he's
Right,
excited
I was
about
glad
it,
to
too.
get that. No, and then, so when it came time to take the bar exam, I studied for it. I still owed the South Texas College of Law $1,500. So I get a letter saying you can't take the bar exam because you owe the school money. So luckily, I'd become friends with a guy at the Frost Bank in Houston that had started law school, but he dropped out, and he was happy that I'd kept going. He said, "Come over here and get the $1,500." So he loaned me
You're an
$1,500.
investor.
And I was able to take the bar exam and pass it with a pretty high grade.
All right.
So,
Robert, one of the things that really touches me here is your brother says something to you that I tell my family all the time. I tell him, I tell all my friends, I say, I love you.
yes,
I say that a whole lot. And, you know, that his brother's saying this to you.
yes,
And he says, I love you.
yes.
And, you know, that just means the world that if you're out there, don't forget to tell your loved ones, or the ones that you do love, tell them you love them. Because sometimes, you know, the Bible tells us that sometimes life is short, like a vapor. It's here one minute, gone the next. But, all right, so I got a couple
Sure.
other questions for
Okay.
you. Okay. You know, it's not every day that attorneys make the papers.
Right.
Or make the TV, or make there's all kinds of stuff on you. I mean, y'all just pull up his name, and Robert what does the T stand for?
No, Robert O. Pelton, Olin. That's somebody wrote that in there.
You
I
know
don't
what? They just know this.
Yeah, that's just
it's Robert. Yeah. Okay. So Robert Pelton, and there's articles everywhere. There's all kinds of great stuff that you don't see with a lot of attorneys. How
And
that
You
start
see them
happening?
running ads on TV, jumping on trucks. I don't do that. I've never had to advertise. The Lord has blessed me. I've never had to advertise. We've always had more business than we want. I mean, we had plenty of business.
And
We've
that's
never had
speaking
to
exactly
advertise.
what you said. Don't focus on the money. Focus on what you're
Right,
doing, and the
right.
money will come.
And what Termite said is true. You need to tell people you love them. If you can find true love and happiness, you're a blessed person. Too many people in the world now do not love their fellow man, and they are unhappy people. So you need to try to love people. You may not be alive tomorrow. The Lord promises tomorrow to no man. That's what I try to tell people all the time.
Don't take
They
it for
say,
granted.
oh, it's too early to do this. I say, you better do it now because you may not get another opportunity to do it. So
That's great advice.
whatever you're going to do it now because you may not get another chance. You could be like my poor brother. He was helping me work on a case that I had in federal court in Plano. I never dreamed my brother would drop dead, and he did. And it's totally changed my life. I know now to try to do everything I can now.
Don't waste time.
And don't wait for tomorrow because tomorrow may not get
You know, that's something I think more young people need to hear. When you're young, you don't even think about
Right.
wasting time because you got all the time in the world. Of course, as we get older, we realize that is not the case. So if you
Right.
could do anything to try to encourage younger
Yes.
people,
That's right.
do not waste time.
So Robert, who is Joe?
Joe is my brother. This
is
is my
your
only brother.
We-
Joe
we
Pelton,
talk-
my brother.
I figured that, but I wanted you to tell me that.
Right.
Now, he was an attorney too?
He went to law school too. He joined the Army like I did. We both went to the same college. We both went to the same law school. A little different. My brother, there's a very wealthy man. His name was Tex Trammell, who was married to part of the Fondren family. I don't know if you know
Yeah,
who
the
they are.
Fondrens, yeah.
So he was an SMU at Southern Methodist University, at South Texas College of Law, and at McMurray and Abilene Methodist School. He went to all the schools looking for a kid that had no money from a family that didn't have a lot of money, and he hired my brother. So when my brother's in law school having lunch with the governor, I'll be in my Volkswagen at Winter Schnitzel getting a $25 hot dog. But he did great. He became a second lieutenant in the Army at age 20.
Wow.
So that's not an easy job.
No.
And my grandson now is in the Army at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. He's now in the 101st Airborne.
So following the
jumping
same
out of
footsteps
airplanes,
as
yes.
granddad.
And my son was an MP in the Army.
Oh, wow. So your family really is, you're
They've been
military,
in the
you served in
military
this country for
since the
generations.
Revolutionary War. I mean, my AGW was joined when he's 15.
Needless to say, y'all love your country.
We are very patriotic. We love our country.
It's one of
We'll
the
fight
things
for our
I've
country.
noticed about you every time I've been around you is how much you love people and love your
Well,
country.
yes.
And so,
And I've learned to forgive. But I've not learned to forget.
That's key. Hey, I
can
think
forgive,
that's very
but
key.
I do not forget.
yeah.
There's a difference.
And in that blue book there, I've got people that forgot about me and people that helped me. And those that forgot about me or treated me badly, like the schools I tried to go to and they wouldn't accept me, I keep all
You
that.
forgive them, but
I
you
forgive
ain't,
'em,
you
but I
ain't
don't-
forgetting them.
I sure as hell
I
don't
think that's
forget it.
wise.
I don't forget it.
I'm just taking these things as they come. Tell me about this page. This is Texas Tech University, but although your application is now complete. The admissions committee has decided to defer passing on your application.
Yes.
Tell me about this.
No, so Lubbock is like an hour or 90 miles from Abilene.
Right.
So it makes sense. That's the closest law school to go to.
Yeah.
So I apply at the law school, and that SOB sends me a letter that he won't take me because my grades are bad or because something. But so I've kept that letter all these years. And I'm sure he's dead by now.
You got to keep those rejection letters all the time so people turn you down.
He's got this one in plastic where nothing can happen to it. And he, as he said, he forgives, but he doesn't forget.
That's right. And here's my certification that I got while in high school. I was certified to be a state certified printer while I was still in high school. That's what I was doing rather than sitting in there listening to a bunch of boring lectures.
You just needed to do something.
I had to do something.
Yeah.
Well, Robert, as we're coming to an end, I'm not going to talk it. You've got
These are so many stories. We could be here forever.
got stories that we could just.
What would be probably the thing you're most proud of? I'm
the
sure
thing
that's
I'm
probably
most proud of is the email I showed to Termite about the lady that was on death row, and she's, because of what I did, she's off death row. When I went up to see her, Pam Farilla, if you see this, I love you, dear. She'd been convicted of capital murder twice, given the death penalty, and then through a series of events that I really not want to talk about here, because of what my testimony in federal court, the judge decided to give her a new trial. She was 8. When I went to see her, they were doing a documentary about it. And before I would be interviewed, I wanted to get her permission because in my mind, she was still my client. When I got there, she started crying. She said, I was 8 hours away from execution, 8 hours away from execution.
Wow.
And because of what you did, my life was spared, and I'm now off death row. When I left that prison, it's like the Lord had lifted me up. And I thought if I died today, I've at least accomplished something.
You've accomplished
in my
that.
life.
You saved somebody. Literally.
The woman, yeah. So it's those moments are moments that the average person doesn't have. The average person, maybe a doctor saves lives, but if you're a lawyer and you've done something like that, those are moments you don't forget.
And
it makes your life worth living and makes you believe that your life has meant something and you've accomplished something. It's not how many dollars you got; it's what you've done to help your fellow man.
And I like to look at the whole string. You were only able to do that, save her, because way back when you decided to pull yourself up and say, I'm going to do something different.
Sit outside that cafe I worked at, and it was on a hill looking over Abilene, and say, one day I'm going to do something with myself. I'm not going to be washing dishes in a cafe.
Every choice matters.
I'm not going to be working in a gas station fixing truck flats. I fixed 16 in one day. I only weighed 137 pounds. I could fix a truck flat faster than any human drill in the world. And
your little F1.
And some of them were loaded with cows. So the word bullshit takes on a real meaning to me because the cows are up there and I'm fixed in the cows.
Tire right below.
Yeah. So, but I kept on going.
Well, it's been absolutely wonderful interviewing you and getting to know you. And thank you for including me in a little part of your life, like bringing me out there and introduce me to all your friends.
That the choices you made to get up and to make a difference led to all these good stories, saving someone's, from death row, 8 hours away from dying. They would have died if you didn't do what you did.
Right.
And I just think I want that to inspire people. You got every little decision, don't waste time. Every little decision you make, every hour that you have in your life, do it today because you're not promised tomorrow. I love how you said that.
No, and also
tomorrow.
In the article that you got that was in that magazine about
which one?
Me, the one.
Which article?
There's one in there.
I've got stacks of them.
I told him, Marvin Zindler and I were in an article together, magazine article together, talking about my life and about how I came here with no money. And I said, the word no does not exist in my vocabulary. When somebody says, no, you can't do this, that just gives me more incentive to get it done.
I love it.
So no means, and I'm not talking about with women. I'm talking about, if a woman says no, I understand that means I don't press the point.
That's the lawyer in you. You got to put your little caveats and asterisks.
Yeah, there's some woman that I like maybe watching this. So. But anyway, but you don't take no for an answer. If somebody says you can't do that, get up and do it. Yeah. I mean, I've been told no so many times, but it turns around and it becomes yes. But you got to keep going. You can't stall yourself. Oh, they said I couldn't do this. They said I couldn't do it. Yeah, you can. You just got to keep going. Don't take no for an answer.
That no's a knockdown.
Read your Bible and pray and ask God to help you. And they'll turn around and say yes.
Words of wisdom, and we'll close it out on this, is He said, read the Bible, pray. Praise
Yes.
is talking to God. And you said, work hard, and you said, don't quit. And
Don't take no for an answer.
Don't take no for an
no
answer.
for an
Read your
answer.
Bible, go to church, forgive people, but don't forget them. The people that do you wrong, forgive them, but don't forget.
Awesome.
And don't make the same mistake twice. Try to avoid making the same
Learn
mistake.
from your mistakes.
Try to learn from your mistakes, but don't take no for an answer.
Mr. Ince, I'm going to let you close it out.
Wise words. I'm going to close out with your tagline. Just tell everybody to keep their guard up.